100 just lit the internet on fire. In a new interview, he claimed that Max B didn't just catch a lucky break with his sentence. He cut a secret federal deal to shave decades off his time.
Haven't you been implying that Max cooperated?
No, we got that paperwork.
Okay.
We got the initial paperwork.
I believe he denied it recently.
According to Wack, he's seen sealed paperwork and even has video evidence that shows Max B sitting down with law enforcement, giving up crucial information about someone connected to his case. The woman in question, Wack says Max even told the feds where she worked and where she lived. And just like that, the wave god is now being painted as something else entirely. But that's not even the craziest part. Wack says the evidence is real, that Max's people, including someone named Pooh Sims, have seen the footage, and that Max's so-called cooperation was so damaging, it could kill any chance of a successful appeal. And while Max B has always denied snitching, Wack is calling cap and promising to drop more in his upcoming expose. As for Gina Conway, she hasn't seen any verified paperwork, and as far as she's concerned, everything Wack is saying right now is unproven and borderline dangerous. Gina's basically saying, until it's in court, it's not real. But let's keep it a buck. In hip-hop, perception can move faster than truth, and when someone like Wack 100 starts throwing around words like federal deal and sealed files, the streets start listening and the blogs start running with it. So before we even unpack Wack 100's claims and what Gina had to say in response, we need to rewind, because this story ain't just about legal moves, it's about betrayal, beef, and a Harlem war that changed rap forever. Long before federal deals, prison drama, or viral exposés, Max B and Jim Jones were just two Harlem dudes trying to make it out. They came up in the middle of the chaos, late 80s, early 90s Harlem, when the crack era was ripping the community apart but also birthing icons like Big L, Cam'ron, and Dame Dash. Max B, born and raised in the Abraham Lincoln Projects, had it especially rough. His mom was addicted to crack and even did time in prison, so Max was raised mostly by his grandparents in a strict religious home, but church ended up being his blessing in disguise. That's where Max learned how to sing, joining the boys' choir of Harlem, and developing the soulful voice that would set him apart from every other street rapper in New York. Meanwhile, Jim Jones was already making moves. He went to high school with Cam'ron, linked up with Freaky Zeke, and helped form the Diplomats, aka Dipset. And by the time Max got out of prison in 2005 after doing 8 years for robbery, Dipset was already a movement Max wanted in. And at first, it looked like he was on track to be Dipset's next breakout star. He started recording with Jim, jumped on hooks, dropped tapes, and even helped write We Fly High, Jim's biggest hit to date. His voice, his vibe, the wavy energy, Max B was about to be the one. But ego, business, and loyalty, or lack thereof, tore everything down, and that's where the real tension started. While Max was writing hits, Jim was making millions. And when Max landed back in jail, Jim didn't lift a finger to help. That's just how these guys from back in the early 2000s roll. But how did these guys get to that point, and how do friends become enemies? Well, there's a lot to be said about that, and it starts with a little history lesson. So, the 2000s had legends, and the culture of that time was raw. At the center of the storm, Dipset, Cam'ron, Jim Jones, and Freaky Zeke, childhood friends turned certified rap royalty. Together, they were building something bigger than just music. They were building a movement. It all kicked off when Cam signed with Rockefeller Records and dropped his classic 2002 album, Come Home With Me. The project went crazy, and suddenly Harlem had a seat at the big boy table. Then came Dipset's debut, Diplomatic Immunity, in 2003, full of gritty bars, Heatmaker's beats, street talk, and pure energy. It was anthem after anthem. From Dipset Anthem to I Really Mean It, the sound was aggressive, colorful, and totally Harlem. While Cam ran the lyrical front, Jim Jones played the street general, loud, flashy, fearless, and Freaky Zeke, the hype man with unpredictable energy, kept the crew moving even after doing a bid in 2004. Once Zeke came home, Dipset only got louder, stronger, and wilder. Their extended squad grew too. Jules Santana, Hell Rel, 40 Cal, all got pulled into the mix. Dipset had the mixtape game on lock. Their videos were flooding the streets, and New York was rocking pink furs and bandanas like uniforms. But beneath the designer and diamonds, the empire was already cracking. Egos were starting to clash. Business started getting murky. And in the middle of all that came Max B. Now here's where it gets wavy. Fresh out of an 8-year prison bid, Max B hit the streets in 2005, hungry for change. He wasn't just another rapper. This man had pain in his voice and a melody in his soul. soul. He didn't bark on the beat like most street rappers. He sang with swagger. He crooned about robberies and women the way R&B singers talk about heartbreak. It was different, and the streets ate it up. He immediately linked up with Jim Jones, who saw Max as the missing link. That raw street credibility, plus hook writing ability, plus melodic charisma. Max B was about to blow. He dropped verses and hooks all over Jim's second project, Harlem, Diary of a Summer, and his voice stood out like sirens in traffic. But the moment that really changed everything was when Max laid down the iconic hook for We Fly High. That record exploded. It wasn't just a hit, it was a movement. It put Jim Jones on a mainstream pedestal. But behind the scenes, that's when Max started realizing he was being used more than he was being paid. Max also wrote the hook for Cam'ron's diss track, You Gotta Love It, a wild shot at Jay-Z, which shook the game. That deep, grimy, melodic voice suddenly had everyone asking, yo, who is this? And once Max dropped his first mixtape, $1 Million Baby, the wave had officially begun. But here's where the first crack showed. Even though Max was helping write records, contributing hooks, and building buzz, he wasn't seeing the same success as Jim. No big contract, no full-blown Dipset album, and no real money. It was like being a ghostwriter in your own success story. And to make it worse, Jim Jones was moving like Max was still just a foot soldier. Max wasn't feeling it, and he knew he had the talent and the streets, but the recognition and respect weren't adding up. The vibe started shifting. Max started seeing through the smoke and mirrors. And even though the music was hot, the relationships behind it were getting ice cold. So while Dipset's dynasty was slowly cracking under its own weight, Max B was quietly plotting a different path, one that didn't involve being second to anyone. And once his name got caught up in a wild robbery case, the fuse was lit. Because what started as the rise of Harlem's next great star was about to flip into one of the messiest rap scandals the East Coast had ever seen. The robbery that changed everything. Just when Max B's wave was starting to rise, everything came crashing down. It all started with Gina Conway, a woman whose name would go from club circles to courtroom documents real fast. She had been floating around Max's circle, known for her ties to street life and her on and off thing with Max. Gina and Max had a toxic relationship. She was a stripper with a wild streak, and he was a rising star with women around and barely any stability. They'd fall out, reconnect, and repeat. But at one point, Max pushed her away, and that's when Gina linked up with Jay Plowden. Jay wasn't no rapper or industry name. He was a flex-heavy dude who rolled up in white Benzes and threw money like it was confetti. Gina saw the bag and made her move. But here's where it got dark. One night, Gina pulled up to the Holiday Inn where Jay and his boy David Taylor were staying. She saw the stacks of cash, the lifestyle, the keys to the Benz. She took mental notes, and then she took his key card. And just like that, the wheels started turning. The setup. After she left Jay's hotel room, Gina went back to Harlem, and according to court documents and her own statements, she told Max everything. Some say she wanted to make Max jealous, but in reality, she handed him the playbook for a come-up. A hotel room full of money, an exact location, a key card in her pocket. Now here's where things get murky. Max B called his stepbrother and right-hand man, Kelvin Leardom. According to Gina, Max told her if she went along with the plan and helped Kelvin hit that lick, he'd love her forever. Gina and Kelvin hit the Holiday Inn and made their move. What they didn't know was that Jay wasn't alone. In the room with him was a woman named Giselle, who was there to rob him too. This whole thing was like a bad movie script. Gina and Kelvin tied up Jay and Giselle, flipping the room upside down, looking for stacks. But they didn't find enough. So Gina told Jay to call his partner, David Taylor, and tell him to pull up with the rest of the money. That's when the situation turned fatal. David came into the room not knowing he was walking into a setup. And as soon as he stepped through the door, Kelvin pulled a gun. A struggle broke out, fists flying, panic setting in. And then, a shot rang out. David Taylor was hit in the head and he died at the scene. From that moment, this wasn't just a robbery anymore. It was a case. Gina and Kelvin fled with $30,000 in cash, but the streets talk, and the feds move faster when a body's involved. Gina didn't last long before flipping. Within days, police caught up with her and found Jay Plowden's stolen laptop in her possession. That was all they needed to bring her in. Once she was in custody, she started talking. Gina told authorities that Max B was the one who planned the whole thing, that Kelvin pulled the trigger, and that she was just the middle piece in the game. That's all prosecutors needed. Max B was arrested and hit with charges for and conspiracy to commit robbery. Bail was set at $2 million, and he couldn't touch it. So while his buzz on the outside was growing, Max was suddenly stuck behind bars, accused of being the mastermind behind a deadly heist, caught up in a love triangle that ended in tragedy. This was no longer rap beef or industry politics. This was real time, real blood, and a case that would haunt Max B for the next 2 decades. After Max B was sentenced to 75 years in prison for conspiracy to commit armed robbery and felony, the world figured his story was over. But behind bars, Max was far from done, and the paperwork started telling a new story. In 2016, Max caught a legal break. His legal team argued that his original lawyer had a massive conflict of interest. Not only was he representing Max in court, but he was also acting as his manager and entertainment attorney at the same time. That meant every legal move had a price tag tied to Max's future earnings. And here's the twist. Max had originally been offered a plea deal for 10 years, but Saludi pushed him to go to trial. According to Max's new legal team, his lawyer knew that if Max took the 10, the money train would dry up. But if Max beat the case, or even stretched it out, the lawyer could stay on the payroll. A judge reviewed the evidence and agreed something was off. Max's original conviction was vacated. He eventually agreed to plead guilty to aggravated manslaughter, cutting his sentence down from 75 years to 20, with credit for time served. That single decision changed everything. Now, we're expecting Max B home this year, but just as the comeback story started building buzz again, Wack 100 blew the whole thing wide open. Wack 100, as we've seen, Wack claimed that Max's sentence wasn't reduced purely because of legal missteps. He said there was a federal deal involved, one the public wasn't supposed to know about. According to Wack, Max sat down with law enforcement, gave up information about someone connected to the case, including their identity, location, and workplace. And that cooperation played a direct role in his sentence getting reduced. Wack even claimed that some of Max's own people, like Pooh Sims, had access to video evidence of that meeting. Meanwhile, Gina started resurfacing online. She claimed she was manipulated and set up, and stressed that Max was smarter than people often give him credit for. She's hinted Max may have known she would fold, and that her role in the plot might have been engineered to protect others. Her comments reignited the debate over who's really telling the truth. But, as far as we can say, Max is probably coming home, and it's gonna happen soon. We might have to wait for that to happen before we get some more deets. And that's good news for the music fans, because Max already said he's ready to make music, not war. Now, all eyes are on whether Max and Jim will finally bury the past, or if Wack 100's Bombshell claims will overshadow any chance of peace. The streets, the legacy, and the politics of trust in hip-hop history, everything hangs in the balance.